Welcome, everyone. I'm Kimberly Boschman, and this is the Intentionally Intuitive podcast. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the numerology and the energy for both the collective and each individual life path number for August 2022. So before we get into the forecast, I just want to, of course, mention that this is a general reading. So if you would like to sort of dive more deeply into your own personal energies, because they may be very different from sort of what we're looking at collectively or what you're even looking at from a collective life path energy, then please book some time with me. I do offer month ahead forecast, personal month ahead forecast, as well as year ahead forecasts, which again are tuned into your personal numerology and your personal energies. And then, of course, I also offer coaching with numerology, your numerology reports. There's a whole plethora of offerings on my website. So if you're interested in working with me and again, diving deeper into your own numerology and personal energies, then book some time with me. I would love to work with you. Okay, so August 2022, we are working with a 14-5 energy. Now, those of us who have a lot of sort of predominant 5 energies throughout our reports, throughout our charts, this is sort of going to be more, it's just going to be more of what we're sort of used to. We're very familiar with this energy, so we can kind of adapt to it and move with the punches. But it's still going to be important to understand that we're getting a heavy dose of this month. And so just to be prepared and so to be able to work with it to the best of our abilities. Those of you who don't have a lot of 5s within your chart, this can be, sometimes 5 energy can be it can feel a little disruptive. It can feel very transformative. It can feel as if sort of the rug gets pulled out from underneath you. But it can also sort of bring more spice into your life. It can bring about this desire for freedom, to break free, to move beyond the restrictions, to travel, to explore. It's a very big, fast-moving energy. So it can be a lot to sort of wrap your head around and your energy around if you're not used to working with it. So, but it is very much working for us as opposed to against us. A lot of times with 5 energy, it tries to move us abruptly sometimes to where it is that we need to be on our journey. So if we've got distracted or we're procrastinating, the 5 energy is so good about sort of coming in like this big gust of wind to lift us up and put the wind in our sails to get us moving again. So it is very, very positive energy, but it can be a lot to work with. So let's look at the forecast. So this can be a cycle when we are forced to sort of see things from a new perspective, because we're not only working with the 5 energy, we're working with the influencing energy of the 14. So this is also, I've sort of marinated that into this forecast as well. So we can be kind of asked to see things from a new perspective through new clarity coming in or new experiences that help us to better understand a situation. So these new experiences may have us reviewing past behavior to see if there's things that we want to approach differently. This is very powerful energy. So this cycle can highlight areas where we may need to choose to modify our lifestyle in some way to get different results than what we have been seeing. There's a lot of sort of personal responsibility that's sort of, again, included in this energy, right? So this is big, explosive, and expansive energy, and desires that we didn't even know that we had can surface now. The more that we can sort of ground ourselves and keep checking in with the reality of the situation, that's really, really important to remember, like to keep checking in with the reality, because 5 energy can have you thinking about, dreaming really big and using that big imagination and going after those big goals, which is great. But we can often lose sight of the reality of the situation and what we're actually working with. And so it's important to keep coming back to that. I kind of sometimes think of 5 energy as being very similar to like Uranus energy in astrology. It's got a lot of the same kind of dynamic influences. So anyway, so again, the more that we can ground ourselves and keep checking in with the reality of the situation, the less likely we are to sort of get swept up into something that's not truly aligned with us and our goals. So pay attention to, again, like what comes in for you this month. Not to say that new relationships that come in this month or that sort of get springboarded this month won't last. It's very possible that they could, and it could be that this energy is coming in to sort of facilitate that. But it's also possible that we're putting on 6 layers of rose-colored glasses and sort of getting enamored with maybe somebody or something that's not necessarily the best long-term fit. So just kind of keep that in mind. And that's what I say, keep coming back to the reality of the situation, right? Try to find a way to marry both those that more idealistic viewpoint and the reality, and then you'll have like a healthy balance. So this can be incredibly creative energy. So this can be a very creative period where sort of we move the magic of the imagination into something more tangible within the physical reality. So this is very supportive energy for unconventional thinking and creating as far outside of the box as your imagination wants to take you. So play in the realm of creativity as much as possible, while also keeping yourself grounded as much as possible. So again, you're finding the balance between the two and having them work together with synastry, right? Like this can be such an incredibly powerful, creative period if we work with the energy in a very balanced way. So moderation, as I always say with 5 energy, is going to be key for the best results, right? For the most beneficial results of this energy. This can also be a profitable time for commercial, sort of seeing more money and business dealings. So anything that you have to do, like any kind of interaction or any kind of, just any kind of interaction that you have or transaction that you have that's commercial, around money, around business dealings, can be very profitable at this time. Just make sure that you're slowing down and paying attention to all of the details and the possible outcomes or scenarios before fully committing or signing your name to anything. And so I want to repeat that because I think it's really, really important, especially when we're working with 5 energy, because we don't have like any kind of 4 energy here, although we might have some through the illuminations of the full moon or the new moon. I can't remember. But 4 energy is like the details. 5 energy is just, let's go. It's so big and expansive that a lot of times it can lose sight of those details, right? The finer print. So again, slow down, pay attention to all of the details and the possible outcomes or scenarios before fully committing or signing your name to anything. So again, it's not like you want to be the Debbie Downer or, be pessimistic or whatever. It's again, bringing that realism into the situation to be like, okay, this is the risk. This is what could potentially come from that risk. This is the potential outcomes. And this is the scenarios that I could be facing if I take this risk. Is it worth that to me? Right. So there just needs to be kind of this, in the midst of all of this big energy, these periods of checking in and making sure that, the route that you're taking or the risks that you're taking are what you want to be taking, or that you're open to, that you're okay. You've explored the possible outcomes and you're okay with those. You might not want to have to deal with those possible outcomes, but you've evaluated them and you can work with them, right? 14-5 energy can bring big hopes and huge aspirations that make it really easy to sort of disregard or overlook possible catastrophic outcomes. And so that's what I mean. It's like, yes, take a risk, but be sure you're well aware of what the potential risks are before saying yes. And of course, it's life, so we don't always know everything that could possibly happen. I think that's implied, right? But it's about doing your best to try to do the research, just to make sure that you have an understanding of what could potentially go wrong, and are you able to work with that, right? If that were to happen, if the worst case scenario were to occur, can you handle that? Can you work with that? If the risk is too great, then you may want to modify it. So modify the situation, modify the opportunity, modify whatever you need to modify, so that if things do go sideways, then you can somewhat easily dust yourself off and start over without too much devastation, right? You don't want to do anything that if things go sideways, it's going to set you back so far that you're now digging yourself out of a hole to try to recover. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, just keep your head about you and just be mindful, right? Just do the research. Just make sure that you're fully educated and fully aware of the potentiality of what could come from these big risks. But don't let that scare you. Like if you do the research and you say, okay, you know what, this is the risk. Yeah, it would suck, but I am fully capable of overcoming it, whatever. It might be a little bit of a setback, but it's not going to devastate me or my family. Go for it, right? Because it's not meant to put fear in you to not do the things that your soul wants to do. It's just to be well educated to make sure that you're not setting yourself up for potential failure, right? Because it also, things with big risks, right? Things with the potential for a big risk, right? Also have the potential for not only like big devastation, but big wins, right? And so you just have to look at it for your own situation and see, what are you willing to say yes to? What are you willing to work with if it goes sideways? So competitive situations can also surface under this energy. So if that happens, try to keep those interactions light and playful. That's going to be really, really important, because otherwise you're inviting in conflict and chaos that can arise very quickly and unnecessarily. So choose how you participate, as always, with this energy. And as always, moderation is going to be key. The more that you can bring in moderation, continue to find your balance, continue to remain centered, then you are going to benefit from this energy in spades. I mean, there's just so much potential here to really flourish under this energy, but just remain as grounded as possible as you play in this 5 energy. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at each individual life path number now. Life path number 7. So I pulled an animal spirit message for you all, and I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but it's the Hoatzin bird. And it's a bird from the Amazon. It's interesting. I had never heard of the Hoatzin. So I had to look it up, actually, just to kind of get some ideas about the message coming through and all that. But what's interesting is, so this bird is from like South America, the Amazon area. When these birds it's also known as like the reptile bird. Kind of looks like a reptile a little bit. But when the chicks are born, they have claws on 2 of their wing digits, which is really interesting. Anyway, so the message that sort of is coming through with Hoatzin, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, with the Hoatzin bird, is that of like love in all forms, commitment, choices. So in the deck that I'm using for the animal spirit messages, it's also a tarot deck. And so it came through as the energy of the lovers, which is interesting, because this bird is just, I mean, it's very unique, but it's just not really the most pretty bird, in my humble opinion. But anyway, so it's come through as like the lover's energy. And so again, it's this message of like love in all forms, commitment, and choices. And really what's really coming through is like that energy of choices, like really paying attention this month, especially to the choices that you make. Instead of, I know it sounds cliche, but instead of being reactionary to a situation or to somebody or whatever, try to pause, excuse yourself from the conversation or from the situation, give yourself some time to reflect, to go within. And this is very aligned with like 7 energy in general, because really you all tend to do so much better when you can take some time for self-reflection, when you can like have some alone time to process whatever it is that you're trying to process, whether it's the emotions or to understand something better or whatever, and then revisit the conversation with the person or the situation or whatever the case may be, right? So it's very sort of, again, it's sort of natural for 7 energy to sort of thrive when you can, again, be a little bit more methodical or take your time before making a decision when it comes to the choices before you, especially if there are several choices before you. So again, when you're making a choice about something, when you're making some kind of a decision, you are sort of being encouraged to really take some time to go into, your inner self and the heart center, and to really move from that space. Now, again, also using your logic and, the physical, information that you have presented to you, all of that as well, right? And 7s also thrive with balancing those energies. But there's definitely something here with Hotsun coming through with something around like commitment and choices, to where with the choices especially, I just think there's something here around sort of slowing your roll a little bit before you make decisions, before you make a choice, before you react, right? Give yourself time to respond in the way that feels good for you, as opposed to reacting and then feeling bad about that or wishing you would have handled it differently or whatever. There's also this energy of commitment coming through with Hotsun. And that I'm really getting around like committing to, like fully committing to something, right? Like, which I don't really think is an issue for 7s, but it's kind of like if there's something that comes through for you, especially this month, and it's an idea that keeps coming through, because 7s can really struggle with self-doubt a lot, or like not trusting themselves, not trusting others, whatever. So there's something here around really trusting yourself and trusting the process and committing to whatever it is that you want to achieve. Again, I don't necessarily think that's an issue with 7s. I think that 7s, when they set their mind to something, you can be so practical that, and such a perfectionist, that you really probably will hit your target in one way or another. And if you don't, you'll be like super critical of yourself and have to work through that and all that, right? But there is something here about committing to something and trusting that decision and then moving on. So it's kind of like if you're presented with all these choices, making a decision, sticking with it, and moving on to the next thing. Don't overthink about it. Don't overanalyze it. Don't beat yourself up for it. None of that. Don't be overly critical. Just make the decision, commit to it, and move on. And then show up as you need to show up, right? So that's coming through really, really strongly. And I do think that there's also something, I don't know, I'm really drawn to that, the fact that there's those little claws on the chicks, which for me would just kind of come across as some kind of like form of like protection. And what that sort of brings up for me is like sort of like building a wall, like to protect yourself, to not be vulnerable in a situation, not to share your feelings, not to whatever. There's something here around like being overly protective of yourself. And maybe this month will give you opportunities to be more vulnerable, to put yourself out there and to open your heart. Not saying that you don't have an open heart, but to like put yourself out there and just see what happens, right? Like don't, to kind of take some of the bricks away from the wall if you've built a wall, right? I'm just kind of getting that really strongly with those claws on the wings. It's kind of like before you use your wing talons or whatever they're called, the wing claws, just maybe, I don't know, take some of the bricks away from the wall and let some people in and just work with whatever happens. You know what I mean? I don't know. A lot coming in around that, a lot coming in around like trust and trusting yourself and trusting your choices and really committing to something with, even if the self-doubt comes in, to still find ways to show up to whatever this is and to see it through without beating yourself up or creating stories of self-defeat before you even get started, before you even had a chance to see where this takes you, right? Okay, enough about Hotsun. So you all you're not only working with the 5 energy as the collective is as well, but you're also working with undertones of 12-3 energy. And so this can sort of feel like a period of waiting. So things may slow down for you during August before they pick back up again. So again, this is kind of right up your alley for most sevens. Most sevens like that alone time, like that time for solitude, the time to regroup, the time for self-reflection, blah, blah, blah. So this can actually work in your favor, but it is kind of this energy of if there's something that you are waiting to sort of take off, or you were going to launch something or whatever, not saying, do whatever you need to do, because we have to go with life over like the numerology, right? The numerology is just a guide, but this is, I think, going to be a period for you all to sort of have to wait and sort of see what shows up and what you're working with. And again, it just might feel like things kind of slow down a little bit before they sort of pick up the pace. So see this period as an opportunity for quiet pause and reflection over hasty action, right? So this may create an opportunity to sort of revisit something that you wish you would have handled differently. And it can also sort of bring about or be a time for reversals if needed. So not only is this an opportunity for like introspection and like really, again, not overanalyzing or sort of, beating yourself up about choices that you made in the past that didn't work out or blah, 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 whatever. It's more about like an opportunity to, again, for self-reflection, to reflect back on something and the circumstances. Do you feel good about the way that it transpired? If you do, then fine, keep going. If you don't, then this month could offer you an opportunity to revisit that, to see like, can it be handled in a different way? Can there be a reversal? Can there be like a different way to approach it? Yeah. And again, with this Hotsun energy coming through, which is like this, the Lover's card in tarot, this love in all forms, can whatever the situation be approached from a space of the heart center and love, as opposed to not, right? So for you all, this month is going to be about inner harmony and outer harmony. That's really going to be the key. So, I think that's a lifelong journey, to be honest, for everybody. But it's also, there are times where the energy is very potent to kind of highlight for us where we're out, where there's disharmony, and then we can figure out how to bring harmony back. And that's a independent job, really, right? And so I think this month is going to give you an opportunity to kind of hone in on that, to see where do you feel like there's disharmony and how can you bring the harmony back? Like what choices can you make to bring the harmony back for yourself? Because again, it's up to you to do that. Do you need to cut people out of your life? Do you need to bring different people in? Do you need to mend some kind of situation? Do you need to focus more on yourself? Do you need to focus more on others? Do you need to look at how you show up to relationships? Whatever the case may be, your specific challenges or your experience will highlight for you where it is that there's disharmony and how best to approach stepping into harmony, right? And so I think this month is just going to feel like sort of like a warm hug with like, a cup of cocoa and a nice book to read and just cozy by the fire. Although if you're like in the Northern Hemisphere, that might not sound enticing because it's hot as Hades here. It's so hot. But so anyway, so whatever sounds good for you, maybe like a dip in the pool. I don't know. But it's kind of that kind of month where it's like, the opportunity for like self-care, like inner reflection, nurturing, and revisiting, but not revisiting in a way to beat yourself up or beat up others, in a way to like soothe the situation so that you at least feel good moving forward, because that's really the key, right? You have no control over what the other person or the other people feel or do or whatever. So this is really beautiful energy. And when I see that this is the Lover's energy coming through with the Hotsun, It really feels like love for self this month, like really focusing on your self-love. And I know, again, that's another story. That's like a journey in itself. But if you're not at the self-love part, what about self-acceptance, right? Like accepting where you are at in this moment, acceptance of the tools that you're using or that you have available to you at this moment. Giving yourself just grace. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to like make wrong decisions. It's okay to whatever, right? Like we have to deal with the outcome of that, and we will. It's okay. So I just think that this month is not so much for you all about necessarily relationships or whatever, but more so the relationship with self and like how you can get to a place of harmony, or at least start that journey, or at least focus on that journey this month to really feel better, to feel good. And I'm not saying that, this isn't going to be relevant for everybody, but anyway, this is beautiful energy coming in, and just take advantage of it. It's very, very feminine, very, very divine feminine energy coming through this month for you all. So definitely take advantage of it. You're also working with that 5 energy, which I do think can bring a lot of change and transformation that you might not want to be ready for, or you might not be ready for. And you'll have to deal with that as it comes in, of course. But I do think that it's going to be up to you to set aside the time for the self-care, set aside the time for the self-reflection, all of that stuff. That's going to fall on you. And I would take that serious, and I would make the time for that, right? All right, 7s, I hope it's a beautiful August for you all. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.